When talking about Latter-day Saint temple rituals, you'll probably hear something like this.
Right? It's super creepy, and you feel like you're wearing a bunch of curtains. They basically brainwash you into
Towards
this
the
nonsense.
end of the endowment, I remember thinking like, oh, this is why people think Mormonism is a cult.
I was told that wearing these robes was one of the most important aspects of my eternal salvation. When this happened to me, I was honestly completely repulsed. I felt very betrayed.
During the endowment in those days, I mean, it's like, what the heck am I doing here?
In this video, we're going to be talking about these claims, and I want to break down what a ritual is and why they're important, and why I'm remarkably unpersuaded by the attempts of these LDS critics and others to paint LDS temple rituals as uniquely harmful or culty or weird. Part 1. What is a ritual? If you sat down tonight for a baguette and some wine, most people would probably just assume you're having yourself a nice dinner. However, if you found yourself eating that same exact meal on a Sabbath morning in a Catholic cathedral, you would be participating in a religious ritual known as the Eucharist. Dunking your friend in a pool is a childhood game in some contexts, and in other contexts, it's a ritual known as baptism. What is it about these actions that changes from a meal or a game in some circumstances to a religious rite of passage or a ritual in others? Let's take this a step further. People all over the world participate in highly ritualized behaviors every day. Even coming from a non-religious background or context, there is nowhere where we see these secularized rituals more than in the world of sports. World champion tennis player Rafael Nadal places his water bottles in a specific arrangement near the bench before every single match he plays. Michael Jordan famously wore his North Carolina Tar Heels shorts underneath his Bulls uniform in nearly every game throughout his entire NBA career. Patrick Mahomes, during his warm-up, avoids touching any lines or logos on the entire football field, prays at the opposing team's field goal, and then lines up exactly on the 30-yard line every single game for the national anthem. And he does his signature run and yell before every game as well. Steph Curry sprints from the center of the court to the hoop at the end of the baseline before every tip-off. One of the temple ritual critics that we clipped at the beginning, Alyssa Grenfell, actually has been photographed participating in her own interesting secular ritual. That's right, in this photo, we have one of the world's leading critics of LDS temple rituals dressed in ceremonial ritual clothing to commemorate a rite of passage. Alyssa likely participated in this ceremonial ritual that involves moving the tassel of her ritual clothing from one side to another, and maybe even tossing her cap in the air in celebration. Why do these rituals capture admiration, participation, love from graduates, fans, and spectators worldwide when LDS temple rituals are seen as strange, culty, or harmful? What are these rituals, and why do some of them get criticized while others are praised? This second question will be addressed more in the next section, but these examples give us some insight into how we can answer the first question. Perhaps the most renowned scholar of religious ritual of all time, Catherine Bell, argues that a ritual is a culturally strategic way of acting in the world, emphasizing that it is a form of social activity. She prefers the term ritualization to describe this, defining it as a way of acting that differentiates some acts from others. If Michael Jordan simply wore his UNC shorts by accident, or if Patrick Mahomes avoided all of the lines on the field just by sheer chance, it wouldn't carry the same distinction and meaning that compels these athletes to perform these rituals in the first place. If Alyssa woke up this morning and decided to bring back those BYU blue graduation clothes and move the tassel on her cap, it wouldn't be the same as actually participating in the ceremonial rite of passage of graduation. Another world-renowned scholar of religious ritual, Roy Rappaport, defines ritual as performance of more or less invariant sequences of formal acts and utterances not entirely encoded by the performers. Rituals are performative actions that have a purpose other than the action themselves. The purpose of moving the tassel on the graduation cap is not to get it to the other side. It's to represent a major life accomplishment. Now that we've laid the groundwork and demonstrated that everyone, everywhere participates in religious rituals or non-religious rituals, we can now dive into why critics of highly ritualized religions can seemingly look past everyday rituals while mocking or attempting to undermine the sincere religious rituals that we practice as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Part 2. Rituals are dope, and I'm tired of pretending they're not. When I hear people criticize the church for our temple ordinances and ritual practices, I often notice that these individuals have not traveled to other countries, experienced indigenous religions, or other cultures. Usually these types of critiques come from an American Protestant background, which is not very ritualized, or a lot of the times, like the people we quoted at the beginning of the video, an ex-LDS background, where they may not understand some of the cultural significance of ritual practice and ritual behavior. In the grand scheme of the world population and the history of humanity, Latter-day Saints are not weird for practicing or participating in temple rites and rituals. In fact, people like those that we quoted at the beginning of this video are in the vast minority for not participating or believing in religious rites and rituals. In fact, I would go as far as to say that none of the elements of Latter-day Saint temple worship at all weird or unique, if we choose not to view it from an individualist Western American lens. Nearly every aspect of LDS temple worship is likely to be found familiar or even comforting or divine if explained to those in other countries and cultures. For example, the LDS temple worship ceremony begins with a ritual reenactment of the creation of the universe and the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and their eventual fall. Similarly, the Shabako story of creation was a script for a drama recited and explained to the temple audience by a lector priest. Hugh Nibley notes that all ancient temples rehearsed the story of creation and the establishment of mankind and the royal government of God upon this earth. In religious ritual liturgy, it is extremely common for the divine voices in the narrative to begin the instruction of the people by reminding them where they come from and reminding the participants of their place in the universe and their shared heritage. Latter-day Saint temples are considered a sacred space or a sacred land where God's instruction and presence is more clear and available. This is also something shared by many cross-cultural religions and practices. Devout Muslims make a pilgrimage to Mecca in order to worship at the religious center of their universe, the Kaaba, a sacred and special place where many Muslims save money and wait decades just to have the chance to visit. Many indigenous and Native American religions also have lands and locations that they hold sacred and unique. Crater Lake in Oregon, for example, is one of the nation's most sacred spaces to the Klamath people. The Oregon Historical Project reports that the Klamath community saw the mountain and lake as a particularly potent place, which only those physically, mentally, and spiritually prepared should be able to enter. Utah's very own Rainbow Bridge is considered a cosmically sacred location to the Navajo, Paiute, and several other tribes. For what it's worth, I've been to this place, and I believe them. There's something truly spiritually special about that place. In addition to the cosmic backstory and sacred spaces, LDS temple ceremonies also include ritual motions and collective verbal repetitions of a temple liturgy. These elements are even more common in cross-cultural religious practices and ceremonies. For example, many Christians participate in the sign of the cross, marking a cross with their hands across their torso. Muslim prayer rituals involve stories and actions performed in sync, kneeling, bowing down, and returning upward. So, if it's not that we believe the temple is a sacred or special place, or if it's not these ritual motions or utterances, then is it the ritual clothing that makes LDS temple ceremonies uniquely weird? I don't think so. Ritual events such as the coronation of the British monarch involve sacred ritual clothing. Monarchs are endowed and anointed with an imperial mantle and are given special ritual clothing for this special event. The Sikh people are heavily invested in their religious ritual clothing as well. Adherents wear ritual clothing known as a ceremonial bana for religious worship. Many regard the Sikh turban as a symbol of sovereignty, dedication, self-respect, courage, or piety. However, most Sikhs would tell you that the real reason for wearing the Sikh ceremonial clothing is nothing more than acting out the love and obedience and the wishes of the founders of their faith. So if it's not the clothing, is it the exclusivity or secrecy of temple rituals that make Latter-day Saint temple worship uniquely culty or weird? Turns out this is also extremely common across other religions and cultures as well. Earlier I mentioned Crater Lake was seen as so sacred and powerful that only cleansed shaman and indigenous spiritual leaders could go near. Sometimes it was even considered unholy for them to go near the lake. In the Middle East, non-Muslims aren't allowed within the holy city of Mecca at all. The ancient Jewish temples contained rooms wherein the access was only restricted to the high priests on certain days wearing certain religious ritual clothing. Many shamanic practices, indigenous rites of passage, healing rituals, cleansing rituals of indigenous tribes and cultures from the United States to Aboriginal Australia and other Amazon tribes all historically practice religious rituals in a sacred and private context, with an audience of only members of the tribe or community. In addition to this, in my discussion with an Eastern Orthodox scholar in Romania, my good friend Aline expressed to me how he actually deeply appreciated how LDS temple rituals were kept sacred and exclusive.
I think that from my perspective, I'm very, applause, if I could say, on other Latter-day Saints for their dedication on temples. I know it's a big thing. In my research, I understand what's happening there, and for the seriousness that they take in the temple, the ritual and covenants they make with God in the temple, and they want to keep that. In a world where everything is on the camera, everyone is exposed, to keep something as a mystery because you understand that should be between you and God, it's something beautiful. You don't just go and expose it like in a family. You go in a public, you invite guests, but still remains something that is just for family.
Yeah.
And it's your privacy, your mystery, your chamber or your thing when you met God and God met you, and you want to keep like that. Not because it could be something secret or something, it's just because it's for your delicacy of your soul.
And in my interview with one of the world's leading scholars of new religious movements, Dr. Lorne Dawson, he shared a similar sentiment from a secular perspective.
This is one of the things you got to watch, because what sociology of religion also reveals is that churches that become too inclusive and dilute their standards too much fail, ultimately, right? And that sectarian religions are strong in the United States because they have these still strong behavioral requirements of people, and they still put some barriers up, symbolic or otherwise. So the trick is, how do you balance these things? How do you become more transparent and open and less divisive and more inclusive, yet maintain the integrity of your identity, right? Some strength to it.
Part 3, the benefits of ritual. When we started researching for this video, we were shocked to find the tremendous empirical evidence for the benefits of participating in rituals. In his book, The Ritual Effect, Harvard professor and psychologist Michael Norton argues for the benefits of ritual participation from an entirely secular perspective. Norton argues that rituals can be an essential part of our healthy relationship with our complex lives. Families that have unique rituals, such as making a certain recipe on a certain holiday or doing certain activities on specific nights, were demonstrated to unite more frequently on holidays and have higher rates of satisfaction with their time spent with family members. Norton also found that 60 to 70% of couples report having at least one unique ritual within their relationship. That might be watching movies, going on walks on the weekends, clinking their silverware together before they have dinner, and so on. Psychologists Caitlin Woolley and Eilert Fischbach demonstrated that commensality, the simple act of sharing a plate while eating, increased and led to couples feeling closer to one another. Sharing in common actions, which are aimed at a purpose other than the actual habit or action itself, increases the unity in families and relationships. The research demonstrates that couples with at least one ritual are 5 to 10% more satisfied in their relationships. These couple rituals and relationships create dynamics and increase cohesion and devotion to one another within a relationship. Norman Rush commented that these rituals and ritual language can develop in a particular way that look ordinary to the couple, but very strange to any outsider. Does that sound familiar? Researcher Nate Dispatch gives an example of a family with a tradition of the first individual to step into the home of the family party being a tall, dark-haired, brown-eyed man carrying bread, whiskey, and milk, and a lump of coal. Dispatch notes that families who participate in these special rituals, shared with them and only them, have reinforced the identity and sense of pride in their family, because the ritual in whole is not found elsewhere in any other families. In the final chapter of Norton's book, he lays out a case for how forgiveness and reconciliation are best achieved through ritual. This section is where I saw the most similarity between Latter-day Saint temple worship and the secular study of religious rituals. Just as we intend to go into the temple in order to be reconciled to God and Christ through participation in religious ritual, individuals who need to be reconciled and come to terms with one another best achieve that goal through a ritualized process. Norton specifically notes that the common human ritual of handshaking is one of our most widespread rituals, brief but nonetheless psychologically potent. Recall a time in which Shuno Abe, the leader of Japan, and Xi Jinping, the leader of China, met together for one single purpose: to shake hands. Handshaking is a ritual of profound significance, even in non-religious contexts. A handshake can symbolize that a deal has been made, with both parties offering up some concessions and expecting to receive something from the other party. As Margaret Atwood states, touch comes before sight, before speech. It is the first language and the last, and it always tells the truth. A handshake is a ritual available to all, so long as they are face-to-face with whom they are engaging with. Norton notes that the origins of the handshake are murky, but the two most common explanations reflect the simplicity and parity. It's either that the clasping of hands symbolizes a binding oath, shaking hands lodges any hidden daggers. He then remarks that we tend not to have as many daggers up our sleeves these days. Norton and other researchers have labored over discovering what it is about clasping hands with someone that is so monumental and essential to the process of healing and forgiveness. I tend to agree with Norton and these researchers that trust, love, and reconciliation are all present in the ritual action, and that the experience of those virtues is better lived and felt through a simple ritual. Just as unique rituals within families and marriages have been demonstrated to bring groups together in cohesion and unity, LDS temple rituals are aimed at binding us to the covenant love of Christ and instructing us on trust, love, unity, and reconciliation through these ritualized actions. We also believe we are more united in the body of Christ as people who participate in these ritualized actions. We as a people, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, have the amazing blessing of participating in rituals which aid us in our reconciliation and loving covenant oaths to God and to one another. So we laid it all out. Are temple rituals uniquely weird and culty? If it isn't the beginning of the ritual drama of the creation and the fall that is uniquely culty, or the ceremonial clothing, or ritual actions, or the secrecy, then what is it? If rituals are empirically demonstrated to be a positive force in the lives of millions cross-culturally, in numerous different contexts, then why is it so surprising that millions of Latter-day Saints worldwide sacrifice so much to get to the temple and to worship? Is it really so surprising that a new temple construction is announced and the members of that area react with tears of joy? If you have made this critique of temples before, I would encourage you to experience some other cultures. Go out and visit their sacred sites and rites and practices before doing it again. Go worship with Muslims in a mosque, Jews in a synagogue, or Orthodox and Catholics in a cathedral. Also, pay close attention to your own life. Are there any rituals you perform that bring you a sense of peace or calm or control, even reconciliation in your life? Ask yourself for a second, am I being unfair towards Latter-day Saints? Do I criticize aspects of their ritual worship that I hypocritically decide not to apply to other cultures or people? Friedrich Nietzsche said, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate you guys stopping by. If you disagree or agree with us in the comments, let us know. If you want to share any experiences with your temple worship or worship in other ritualized settings in other religions, please do. We'd love to hear them. And we'll see you later.